Welcome to the continuation of the series I started with the launch of Warhammer 1, where we take a look at some very interesting units from the tabletop and see how well they transitioned into the game, looking at their overall performance in both formats as well as some spicy lore information. You might ask, Reptilicus, what's wrong with you, dude? Why are you doing this? It's no sense comparing something like that. And the answer is, because I can. Also, it's a good way to show how some stuff worked on the tabletop for players who've only had experience with the video game. More knowledge never hurt anyone. Okay, yeah, let's ignore that part. It's plastic to fantastic, baby. Wait, I know it's resin nowadays, but find me something that rhymes with resin, okay? Beastmen are pretty fun to hang around with, you know. They drink, they hate on civilization, they fight, they kill, they... They kill, they drink, they piss on statues, they do a lot of Rule 34 stuff when the writers can imply it a little bit, but most importantly of all, beastmen eat. Yes, Anon, I was shocked just like you when I found out that living organisms need sustenance. I know. But feasts are a pretty big part of beastmen, quote-unquote culture. Doesn't matter if it's a whole night of sacrificing captives and orgies dedicated to the gods, or eating the corpse of an unlucky bestigor that had the balls to challenge the current beast lord for dominance. Badly rotten dwarf corpse? It doesn't matter what kind of flesh it is, the beastmen will eat it. The maggots add some extra protein anyway, right? Minotaurs take this culinary adventure a step further. You see, Minotaurs love to eat, but it's not due to a never-ending hunger like the ogres. Minotaur hunger is driven by something a little bit more interesting besides biological urges. Every time they smash and bite into sentient flesh, they are filled with pure ecstasy. To quote it poetically from the army book, they feel an unholy exhilaration. In other words, Minotaurs get a hard-on when they're eating the flesh of sentient creatures. Literally, I want you to think about that the next time you fight Minotaurs and lose. You know what's happening. Human, elf, other beastmen, light meat, dark meat, it's all the same. Razor gore bacon? Hell yeah, dude. Centigore sausage? I mean, sure if you're into it. Now, some Minotaurs are into this real Gordon Ramsay shit. If they're stronger than their tribe mates, they turn to cannibalism and devour any Minotaur that they can kill. And when they start, they just can't stop eating. The stronger the Minotaur, the more he kills and eats, and sometimes this pure organic Dracwald beef isn't all homegrown and natural, it's full of chaos taint, believe it or not, and the Minotaur obviously doesn't care. Sometimes they'll supplement this heavy protein diet with weird stones and the carcasses of any chaos-corrupted animal they come across, but such a volatile diet can only produce one result, besides dying from a heart attack. I'm talking about change. The Minotaur grows to a gargantuan size. At least one pair of cleaver-like limbs sprouts from its body. Meanwhile, at least one mouth grows somewhere in the body. As with all creatures of chaos, there are no limits to what can happen. Sometimes the Ghorgon's heart is replaced by a mouth. Sometimes they get 3 of them on the stomach. Sometimes it's the nipples replaced if it was dedicated to Slaanesh previously. Who knows? I don't know, you don't know, but you get the point. The only thing that's consistent is the overall shape of the creature. And for some reason they attach a cowbell to it. If you thought things couldn't get worse, their sense of smell becomes extremely heightened, to a point where they're capable of smelling even a droplet of blood from a long distance. Does that remind you of something? Ghorgons are extremely rare, and even though I'm a giant Beastman fan, I like to think that's a good thing. If you thought Minotaurs couldn't get their mouth stuffed, these bovine bros are even worse. The transformation takes their appetite to new levels of insanity, and they will just grab and shove anything into their mouth, or mouths, we don't judge. So what if they accidentally eat an entire Beastman tribe in one night? Well, shit happens, dude. The Ghorgon grows stronger at least, and that can potentially be a great thing for the next Brave Shaman that attempts to control it. Unless it ends up eating him and the tribe. And if it's sustained damage, no big deal. Ghorgon flesh regenerates itself every time as long as it's consuming something, so it's good to go. My opinion about the Ghorgon? I don't even know where you could hide. Go to another continent where the beastmen never had any presence. Yeah, never mind. You're screwed. We've seen the origin of the Ghorgons and what makes them so special. Now, let's take a look at their tabletop performance. Ghorgons cost 275 points for a model, and I know what you're thinking, we're getting into expensive territory, right? Are they worth the price? Well, stick around and find out. When it comes to the great things about them, Ghorgons have a pretty great stat line. They're really fast for such a huge monster with 7 movement, and their strength, toughness, wounds are sitting at a pretty impressive value of 6. They also have kinda fine initiative and weapon skill for such a big chungus. Now get ready for a shocker. They have 6 attacks baseline, and on top of that they get an extra attack from Frenzy, and they also have Thunderstomp. What this means is that the Ghorgon is capable of ripping and tearing through just about anything as long as the dice gods are with you. And if you're successful at killing stuff, say hello to Bloodgreed. It's a passive that's unique to all Minotaurs. Basically, if the unit is winning combat, it gets Frenzy. If it already has Frenzy, every time it's on the winning side of combat, it gets an extra attack. Think about this for a moment. In theory, the Ghorgon snowballs out of control if you're winning. But there's a downside to this. If you lose a round of combat, you lose all your bonus attacks since you lose Frenzy, and then the unit goes from being insane to insane but on medication. Also, Bloodgreed makes them pursue or overrun only up to D6, but that's usually not a problem. Choose your targets carefully, and you'll have a monster that's basically capable of solo carrying combat. Oh, they also come with Terror, immune to Psych, but both of them need no explanation. Also, they're stubborn with Leadership 10, they're pretty much not going anywhere unless they get killed. On top of these basic abilities, the Ghorgon comes with 2 unique ones. Swallow Whole, and Strength from Flesh. To explain this, the Ghorgon exchanges all of its attacks to make one special attack at Initiative 1, and this sounds pretty bad on its own, but it does have a killing blow at 4+, so it will insta-kill any infantry, cav, or like smaller war beast if it rolls 4+, regardless of save. Every time the Ghorgon swallows, and the thing inside dies from T for stomach acid, it doesn't really matter, it regenerates D3 wounds. This has crazy potential in theory if you're playing it into its win condition. Find some infantry unit that has average or below average weapon skill and just go downtown, eat them, heal up, never-ending torture. Does this monster even have any weaknesses at all? Well, the most obvious one. It has no saves. It's squishy as hell. There's a giant bullseye, no, not literally, hanging above its head for every war machine in a 5 Games Workshop store radius. Massed skirmisher fire and big decent infantry blobs can ruin its day. The Ghorgon also needs some Bloodgreed stacks before it's ready to destroy everything on the table, including your opponent's soul. Joke's on him, he's playing Warhammer. Oh, joke's on you, so are you. What about the regeneration? It sounds amazing, right? But it has a big trade-off. You will only be doing 1 attack, so you need to pick the target carefully. If you end up losing the combat round, you lose all your Bloodgreed, all your Frenzy benefits, not to mention that it's Initiative 1, so there's a chance you'll just die before the attack even goes off. That's it. It's a monster that has some risks, with a big price tag, but the benefits outweigh him by a ton, or 2, I really don't know how much a Ghorgon weighs. But hands down, it is one of the best monsters in Warhammer, without a doubt. When it comes to the model though, just look at this. It's pure beauty, really. And because it's tabletop, that means you get to paint it the way you want, baby. Just get some inspiration from cattle, such as wait, I'm supposed to say this in a fantasy way. Texas Stein Longhorn, Albion Black, Beefmaster, Ostland Humpback, and whatever the fuck this is, I really don't know. And this is what you've been waiting for. No, wait, this is what all the Beastman fans have been waiting for. Finally, the Ghorgon in the game. So how does it compare to the tabletop version? Purely looking at the numbers, there are a few things not to love, as it seems to have translated pretty well for the most part. On the offensive side, you got disgusting weapon strength, charge, attack, blood greed, which, even though it's not as powerful as it was on the table, it still helps the Ghorgon bring on the pain, as long as it's not wavering or something. Fear and terror, all the goodies as you would expect, and it's really fast for its size. Strength from flesh is in the game, thankfully, but it's much different from the tabletop version. There is no killing blow bonus damage, no nothing, it's just a passive regeneration effect that heals 8 hit points per second. This puts it on par with the best regen effects in the game, but the only downside, it requires you to be in combat so you can't abuse the Ghorgon's speed and kite around the map to heal it up. If you want to live, you have to commit. To what? Now that's the question. When it comes to killing, the Ghorgon is much more specialized than it was on the tabletop. Infantry, the Ghorgon can do fine against the lower and mid tiers, but honestly it's completely wasted in this role. Its splash attack looks great and it can rack up kills against low HP entities, but it's gonna suffer massively from getting swarmed. It's just too easy to blob. Its combat animations are not as broken against infantry as, let's say, the Jabber's Life, another addition from the DLC. It can still do fine if it's used to rear charge on top of having fear and terror, but what in the game can't do that, really? On the other side, the Ghorgon is amazing against larger targets, which were historically a giant, terrible pun, problem for the Beastman. So this completely changes some matchups in the Beastman favor, like, let's say the Vampire counts. It's capable of going toe-to-toe, or better said, hoof-to-hoof against just about any monster unit from a purely damage point of view, but here's where the things can get bad for the Ghorgon. It suffers from the Giant Syndrome, where it has a chance to get knocked down quite often in combat against other monsters. It is matchup dependent though, and it's much better compared to what it was on the beta version, where it would just constantly get knocked down. Animations aside, it's still fantastic against large targets in general, and due to its speed, you are the one choosing the engagements, in most cases. As an example, the Charybdis, which is one of its counters, it's disgustingly slow. All you have to do is not charge into it head-on. I know, Korean advice, it's hard. Use your mobility to your advantage, don't just tunnel vision. If you were on the fence about the Ghorgon so far, let me introduce you to the Bloodbrood Behemoth. It comes with extra stats, frenzy, and scaling damage. The lower the target's health, the more damage it'll do. It doesn't care about animations, it's got one purpose, to crush anything that stands in its way. With good use, it'll turbofist practically every monster in the game besides the Shredder of Lustria due to obvious reasons. It would make one hell of a blockbuster movie though. The Bloodbrood is practically unstoppable if used correctly, and I'm sure that it'll be a staple of many Beastman builds as it has no downsides in its specialized role besides the general Ghorgon weakness. They're squishy as hell. The best way to deal with Ghorgons is from far, far away due to the combination of 50 armor and their giant size, which means that they'll get shot to death even if your entire ranged unit is blind in both eyes. Also, logic, keep them away from decent anti-large infantry and poison, it's really gonna make them suffer. And there you have it. Compared to the tabletop, the Ghorgon is much more specialized against monsters, but it's still capable of butchering infantry as long as it's used smartly. Definitely a great investment overall. Pretty happy about it. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Good for you. So now you get the chance to decide the next Plastic to Fantastic I do, so pick anything from the tabletop game, doesn't matter as long as it's a cool unit, put it down in the comments and I guess I'll just coin flip. And until then...